Welcome back to the It's Bigger Than Me podcast. I am so excited for our guest today. Now, Joanne is more of a new friend of mine. Joanne, I love being able to share the story of how we met because it's just like God to do a kingdom connection like this right off the bat. You hear somebody start talking and you're like, I need to know that person more. There's something there. There's treasure in there and I want to see it. I want to hold on to it. So, Joanne and I met, a mutual friend was having a birthday. I was hearing Joanne talk across the table about what she does and just what God's doing through her, just when it comes to women, when it comes to giving, when it comes to just so many different things of how God's using her. And I was like, I need to know that woman. And then I said, she has to come on the podcast. So we've gotten to know each other just a little bit. But Joanne, I would love for you to be able to share a little bit more about who you are, your story. I know you're passionate about resilient friendships. You're passionate about kingdom intentionality, giving. There's so many different ways that we can go here, but please share a little bit of your background with us so my audience can get to know you just like I've been able to.
Oh, thanks, Molly. It's been such a joy to get to know you, and I'm so honored to be here with you and then your audience. And so, thank you for just inviting me on. It's been so much fun. So basically, like a little bit of background for me is that I am a Southern California girl, grew up here my entire life, and just have always been a part of. Once I became a Christian, started to get into community, women's discipleship groups, and all the things. And what that led to is just really a passion to see women walk in the fullness of their purpose and identity. And so, in that place, throughout my life, I've done all kinds of things with women's ministry. My husband and I were on staff at a church for 7 years. We did all things community, women's ministry, men's ministry, family ministry, all the things. We taught in a school of ministry for 16 years, all about community, all about, for a trimester, we would teach on, why community, why relationships matter, how to have brave conversations, how to actually press in for the more of God in relationships. And so we just that's kind of just been the trajectory of my life, always been involved in all of the things. And so a friend of mine reached out to me several years ago, like 10 years ago now, a decade ago. And she just had it on her heart to bring women leaders together in the region who were in ministry, but really didn't know each other and didn't have connection. And she knew all these women that were leading in women's ministry or a movement, but they didn't really have a safe place to come together and share like what God was doing and how they are doing personally and what they need. So we started this ministry called Kingdom Women, and it's now Kingdom Women Global. But we started it just with that heart to really connect women, like-minded women who are doing incredible things, but really don't know each other, and build relationship and have them build relationship with one another. And so in the course of all of that, we continued down that road and would do conferences and events and just different opportunities for women to engage, to get to know each other, but also to equip them and to encourage them and empower them to walk in their God-given purpose and identity and literally impact their sphere of influence, because we all have one. So that's kind of been like a passion of mine. And in the midst of that, as we all know, like being women and women being women in relationships, there's messy people and we all have our stuff. And so really a heart passion of mine is to help women and in general, like women, but it can relate to men and women, to really walk in relational health. And so I think people are challenged, right? We're all challenged in relationships. We all are different. We see things differently. We experience things differently. We've had different experiences that we bring into relationship. And so there's just a lot that comes to play, especially as you start to really get close to people and you start to do life and community with people. And so that is kind of where we were talking about having that conversation at dinner about, our relational kingdom and like, what does that look like? And just the whole idea of relational intelligence. And that's kind of a new concept that with the spiritual intelligence and all of the different intelligences we have, spiritual and intellectual, we've got relational. And so people kind of don't don't really deep dive into relational intelligence because it can be a little bit messy and it can be a little bit hard and it can feel a little bit tricky to navigate. So that's just kind of something that I'm passionate about, and the book I'm writing is about that as well. Of just how do we do that well? How do we have resilient friendships? What do we need to have resilient friendships? What's included in having one? Like, what does that look like? And what are the things we need to actually be mindful of and intentional about in our relationships so that we can sustain friendships that are actually kingdom connections, kingdom friendships for purposes, right? Because like we talked about, like God brings women together for incredible purposes and reasons. And so if we can move together in unity and we can actually like press in during the hard times and get through stuff, like really our relational world, when it's in order, we are unstoppable. When our relational world is off, we are off kilter, and it drains us, and we don't, feel as motivated. We're not moving forward in momentum like we were because there's things that are pulling us back. And so we want to stay in that place of health. So it's kind of that's a long answer to your question, but just kind of the encompasses, just my passion for women, women in general, women's ministry, but also really about women walking in relational and emotional health in their relationships so that they can thrive, they can impact, the world around them that God's called them to. So
Yes. Oh, I love that. And I love that you went there because I love being able to talk about the different intelligences out there. Like let's dig in. Let's have a better understanding. And it's so timely. Isn't it like God to be like, "Hey, we're going to drop this right in because I'm actually currently as we speak going through something right now with a friend where it's definitely taking some more relational intelligence on my end that I'm not used to just of where this is going. And I'm like, okay, Lord, what do you want to show me? And I'm like, and here we are recording this thing. I'm like, I'm probably going to learn some things that I can use in this very situation because I'm always open to learning. So I love that you dove into that because everyone, when it comes to relationships, first of all, you're cultivating that in a community, which is amazing. In women's ministry, like women love being in community, they love relationships. But the minute something gets a little off, a little hard, it's like the wall goes up, can't deal with you, figure out your stuff, then come back. Rather
right.
than let's press into the hard, seeing where people really are. And I remember when that clicked for me in my maybe like mid 20s of really actually seeing beyond what they're saying, what their body language is saying, like really hearing and seeing things that aren't being said. And it really takes this, I got to step outside of myself and really be there for that person. And I pray all the time, like, Lord, I wish more people had this, but it really is challenging to get to. It takes a lot of dying to self and really being there for that other person. So, because you're writing a book, you have been around women, serving women, leading women for a very long time. What do you think the biggest disconnect is for women really being in there and having that intelligence? Because again, there is that breaking point. The minute something kind of gets hard, we back away because dot dot dot. What do you think that is?
Well, I think there's two. I think I have two theories about this and what that is. One of the things that I believe in, that I've seen kind of in the relational aspect of my world and just relationships in general, is that people want to, when there's a conflict, when there's a misunderstanding, instead of having the brave conversation, people tend to want to avoid connection over that issue because they're afraid of disconnection, because
Mm.
they're afraid, I mean, of rejection, right? Or maybe they've got an issue of rejection, I mean, which we all, probably all women have a little bit of that resonating underneath the surface, of rejection, abandonment, feeling like they're not going to be understood. So I think that what I'm always sharing with people is like conflict is normal. Conflict is a part of life. Conflict is part of relationships. So you're not going to avoid it. Like conflict is actually part of how we grow and how we actually connect and how we actually get to a place of clarity in our connection, in our relationship, and how we actually go deeper if we do it well, right? If we do it right, if we choose to go and have the conversation that we need to have versus allowing the enemy to speak to us about what we think is going on or what we think they might be feeling, or the perceptions and and just kind of not actually going and saying, hey, I need to have this conversation because here's how I was feeling in this moment. Here was my experience. I just want to hear from you. what was your kind of what was going on for you? What was happening for you in this moment? Because I just want clarity because you matter to me. Our connection matters to me. Your heart matters to me, but sometimes we go into relate those kind of conflicts with our defenses up and like, I'm coming in with my guns because I know you're going to come at me. And so, we're listening to respond versus listening to actually release healing and clarity. So there's kind of that whole aspect of conflict that I'm always like encouraging people, please don't avoid the hard conversations. Hard conversations actually lead to deeper intimacy and connection if they're done right, right? So there has to be a goal in mind in going into a conflict, right? You like if you've got a misunderstanding in a friendship or there's a conflict, I always tell people, what's your goal? Like have a goal before you go into that conversation. Is your goal to be right?
Mm.
That could probably be a lose-lose situation. Is your goal to be heard? That also could be a win for you, a lose for them situation. But is your goal connection? Is your goal to actually understand what happened or where they're at or what was going on for the two of you relationally? Well, that's more of a win-win, right? Because you're listening, you're wanting to actually provide feedback, you're wanting to make sure they know your heart toward them, your love toward them. So it's a different kind of conversation with a different goal in mind. So I'm always like, don't go into the conversation until you can get there, like take the time to pray, take the time, to do what you need to do, the work on your heart, but don't avoid it. Because also what I find is people want to avoid those conversations, and really in like kind of our Christian world, we'll be like, okay, I'm just going to process it with the Lord and we're all good. And, I'm good. I'm good. But we didn't have the hard conversation. We didn't have the clarifying conversation. So then what happens is that thing comes back around either through that person or someone else. And then it gets hit again because it never really got resolved because we are created for relationships. God created and hardwired us to be connected and to have these relational connections and conversations. So, as hard as it feels and emotionally charged as it can feel at times, if we go in with the right perspective, the right goal in mind, his heart, and we're actually for connection with that friend and actually bringing restitution or bringing resolution or bringing just restoration to a misunderstanding,
Mm.
it's it's always going to be a win because that's what he's about, right? Like he is not about, disunity. He's all about us coming together in unity, especially in relationships. So there's that aspect of it. So one other one really quick, and I know we talked about this a little bit, Molly, but just our relational kingdom is another phrase I kind of like to use with relational intelligence, is that we have, a lot of relationships in our life, right? But where we place people in our relational kingdom can really affect how we get into these situations where there's hurt, there's misunderstandings, there's actually a missed expectation or an expectation put on somebody that should have never been there because they're not capable of being that person or friend in your life. And so that's kind of a whole nother, kind of topic of conversation about putting people in the right places in our life so that we're not in a place of dysfunction relationally where we're expecting something that actually they can't give to us relationally because they just have their own lives and their own situations going on. And it's not about a lack of love. It's just about really honoring who they are and their situation and season of life and making sure that we're clear, like about who they're supposed to be in our relational kingdom, because we've got like the inner spaces of our palace. We've got, the palace in general, the courtyard, the outer walls, there's places for everybody, and that can change depending on the season and what's going on for them and for you. But just being mindful of that so that there isn't that woundedness that can come into relationships because people are missing one another because they're not in the right spaces in each other's world.
Hope everybody's picking up on how much value is just being dropped on this. This is so good. I had to start taking notes. I was like, I usually always take notes, but there's so many points. I'm like, I got to touch on that. I have to touch on that. That's so good. Joanne, so many good spots. I want to start with this. I love the fact that when you go in with the relational piece, having a goal in mind, like that part right there, I mean, that takes a whole nother level of restraint, responsibility in the conversation of having a goal in mind. Where is this coming from? So there's something that we actually teach in our, it's called our Radiant Leadership Academy. It's a 16-week deep dive biblical leadership certification that we have in Girl Power Alliance. One of the things that we teach in there that is so powerful, and I catch myself doing it all the time, it's called second thought theory. The first thought that pops up, take that captive. Is that correct? Then maybe we have to, formulate a second thought because we just have to let our flesh die first. That happens a lot when it comes to that goal in mind, what's about to happen in this conversation, in this conflict. And when we grasp that, like, okay, wait, this is my first thought. Is that the one I want to go with, or do we need to have another one? It's so important. And having that goal, really, there needs to be at least one of the two. Preferably, it'd be great if there was both. Usually that doesn't happen. Of what's going to be the end result of this? If I speak from my flesh, is this going to blow up in my face? Are they not going to feel seen, heard, or appreciated? Because everyone wants to be understood. And I love that you shared that. I've had moments with my husband where we definitely we're very opposite in a lot of ways, but I've had to rewire a different level of understanding to really have him feel like he is heard, which then gets me ultimately what I want, which is us to be able to communicate better, So it all comes back around, but the goal in mind of how can I serve the other person that I'm speaking with, knowing that that's my responsibility as a kingdom woman, as a Christ follower. I love that you brought the point up of like, you got to address things. Otherwise, it's just going to keep coming back around. And it's so timely that you said that, because literally in my quiet time this morning, as I'm recording this, it's actually my birthday today. And so I said, Lord, my number one thing thank you. The number one thing that I want for this year for my birthday is I want to know, lead me and guide me into how can I speak more boldly in love, in truth, in love to people. Like Jesus was a sniper with some of these like responses. And I was like, I want to be a sniper like Jesus. Like I want to speak boldly in truth, in love to people. What does that look like? Because so often people are scared to speak boldly, or sometimes it's too bold because they didn't have a goal in mind of how is this going to impact the other person. So there's so much awareness that comes to that. So I love that you shared that, because I believe as women sometimes, and I'll be honest, this may be not great for some to hear, we're doormats. We just let people say whatever they want, or we just pass it off because we don't want to rock the boat. Like, get in there and let the Lord show you. So that was so good. And then the last piece, this is so good. The expectation of the other person. When you're expecting something out of somebody else that wasn't communicated, or it's how you're feeling, or you're bringing in other feelings for just what's going on in your life, dumping it on that person where it's completely unfair. We have to know, what is this space? What are we doing right here with this person? Push everything else aside. What are those expectations so you can really cultivate that relationship on a deep level? So I know I kind of fire hosed you back with all the things that you shared, but it's just so good and so timely that I know even men listen to this podcast. Guys, this is for you too. Like, this is really good to take it deeper, because imagine if Jesus was surface level. Imagine if he didn't have those sniper-like qualities with those, intentional parables and comments to get people to kind of like, well, wait a second, because we know deep down, obviously he always did it in love. So I don't know if you have anything you want to say to that, since we're kind of go back and forth here, but those were so, so good, so powerful.
Well, yeah, no, I love all the points that you're bringing up. And one of the things I was going to touch back on with what you said about, being bold, speaking the truth in love, right? So for me, like what I always try to encourage people in those, moments of where they're going to go and have a brave conversation is what I like to call them, brave communication, brave conversation, is that, is that make sure the person feels loved first, right? Make sure they know, like, hey, I just want you to know I'm having this conversation with you because I love you and because your connection to me is so important and our relationship is so meaningful to me. So I just want you to know, like, I love you. I want you to feel heard. I want you to feel seen in our conversation. And I want to make sure you know that first before we go into all the other things, right? Because sometimes we forget that and we get into the moment and we just start going, and the other person might feel like, that defense wall goes up because they're not feeling loved. They're not feeling like I feel safe. And so I always think about, like, when you watch The Chosen, right? When we've all watched The Chosen, and how Jesus, when he was a sniper, he did it in such a way that they received it because they felt loved, right? Every time he gave a hard word, they felt loved by him. And so I think like when we can think of that in relationships, like sometimes we do have to give a hard word to a friend. Like the wounds of a friend can be trusted, right? So if our friends and our, and I'm going to say that those are your like palace friends. They are in the palace with you. They're in the bedroom with you. They are your closest peeps that those people can receive the truth and love, right? We have to always navigate like how strong is our relational bridge to have this conversation, right? Like how much relational equity do I have here to have that hard conversation? So you have to evaluate that too in the speaking the truth in love. But I know we're talking about like our inner people, right? Those close-knit friends. And so I love that because, of course, we always want people to feel loved and to feel seen and to feel heard. And to know that up front will really help. It helps me to receive if I have to receive something hard from a friend. It's like to know that they're having this conversation because they love me. They are having this conversation because they're calling me higher. And they're having this conversation because they want to make sure our connection is pure and pure-hearted. I'm all about that. So yeah, I just love that you brought that up. And I think just again, the expectations part is always, again, it's like having the honest conversations, like that is really like the heart of all of this is that we tend, like you said, to not be honest because we don't want to hurt people's feelings and we let things slide that we should not ever let slide in relationships because those things build up over time. And
Right.
if we're not being honest about how those things are affecting us or how we're even viewing those things, which may not even be true, then the enemy wins. And he loves to come in and bring division and he loves to come in and separate women and cause them to be disunified because he knows how powerful we are when we're connected. He knows how powerful we are because
Mm.
we are the heart, right? Like we are the heart of the homes, we're the heart of our communities, we're the heart of churches. We're God's like heart with flesh on, and so he is love. And so when we are disunified and when there's stuff going on in our relational worlds that are just rocking our boat, it's we are actually taken out of it, and we tend to not be the fullness and walking in the fullness of who he's created us to be.
Oh, so good. I had 2 points that I was like, oh, these are so good. The knowing, like you said, what friends are these? Are they in the bedroom in the palace friends? Are they outer courts? Are they the outer wall? Like, where are these people? And those people knowing how you can speak that truth and love because, like you said, they want to feel that love first.
Yeah.
And, for people that I am closer to, one of the phrases that when I first heard this, I said, wow, this is so powerful. And I hope somebody tells me this if I ever need to hear it is, when are you going to stop telling yourself that story now?
Hmm.
Just like, I love you so much. And when are you going to stop telling yourself that story now? And
Yep.
it gets you to be like, wow, I am telling myself that story. No wonder I'm having this cycle is because I keep latching onto this story as an excuse, as a crutch, as a floaty, instead
Mhm.
of just being like, okay, I'm going in the deep end, Lord, where are we going? Because we don't know what's out there. And that's okay because the Lord's always with us. So that was really powerful. And you have to know what type of friend and what that relationship is like. So that is really, really key.
Yeah.
Then yeah, the expectation piece. It's just such a deep piece to really just again be aware. And I love how aware you are, and I love how even to the point of knowing us as women and our role. I remember, I don't even know, I think this was like 2 years ago. The Lord's like, hey, you're going to start writing a book or as a devotion. He's like, you just need to start writing. So I went to a coffee shop and I started writing, and it's just kind of sat there. And I know he's going to do something with it, just not really sure what, just walked in that obedience. But in that moment, he really got me to pay attention to who did Satan slither over to first? He knew the power of what Eve had, knew the power of her voice, knew the power, the what she was designed to. He knew. She didn't know, but he knew. And when women understand that we as ladies have been attacked since the dawn, I mean, we all get attacked by different reasons. But then also, I'm very passionate about speaking. I've been a speaker coach and just helping men and women just unlock their voices for so long. Think of it like a noose. Like we have had an assault and a noose around our neck so we don't speak, we don't think for ourselves, we're quiet, we sit down because the enemy knows. He knows when we come out of that, the truth, the love, the nurturing, the grace, the empathy, the things that make us so just sweet and tender and gifted of what God has designed us to be. He knows how that can have a ripple effect. And I like to say, if the world had more nurturing, love, empathy, grace, what would it look like right now? a whole lot different. So I love that you touch on those pieces to just when you press into that. Maybe you're hearing something on this podcast right now. You're like, I need to press into that. The Lord's really speaking to me on that. There's a depth that He's inviting you into to go deeper. And gosh, Joanne, this is just so good. It's just that invitation where, okay, what is he speaking to you? And then just also that kind of that self audit of like, well, how have I been? What have I
Yeah.
been? And so I love that you're bringing this up. Anything that you want to say on that?
Well, I love all of that, and yeah, it's such a beautiful place and a great conversation to have because we don't have them often enough about this part of our relational world really in general. Like we just don't, we talk a lot about the Lord and our intimacy with him. We talk a lot about reaching the world, but this relational place is where it all flows from, right? How we are in the world and how we are in our spheres of influence. So it's really important to get this space cleaned up and to really like be mindful and be relationally intelligent, with one another and for ourselves, because there's so much that he's called us to do, and we have like we have so many areas that he's asking us to step into and impact, but this will hinder us. This will actually truly hinder our ability to do that and to do that well and in the way that he's designed us to do it. So I love having this conversation, and I love deep diving into it. And one of the things I was thinking when you were talking is that another question, and just something that maybe somebody here, this will speak to them too, who's listening, is really important to ask is like, Lord, what do you want me to believe about this relationship or this friendship or about this situation I'm having with a friend? What are you saying? What are you saying? What am I supposed to believe? Because like you said, we can tell our stories, like we can listen to the stories of what we think, but we really need to go to him and say, like, what do you think? You
Yes.
know, I want to align my heart and myself with what are you saying? What is true about this connection and this relationship? And what do you have for us? And so that we can land in that place of truth and we can come to that relationship from a place of understanding God's heart for them and for us and our connection, which is so powerful. And it actually, you know how it is. You get in his presence and he speaks to you about something and everything changes. Like, the heaviness of it all, the weight of it all lifts off because you've got his heart now. And
Yes.
then you're able to go speak the truth in love because you know his heart for that person and you know his heart for your connection to them and
Yes.
why it's important. So that was just something that I was thinking about when you were talking, like, just making sure our beliefs are aligning with what he's saying. And we're not just listening to a conversation that might be a very old conversation from a very old experience we had, but the enemy knows it. And so he's wanting to play on that to create a case against a relationship or a person that was never meant to be there.
Yes. Oh my gosh, it's so good. I love that. I absolutely love that. There is just so much wisdom in that to just be aware. Again, I feel like I keep saying aware, but it's so true. And I love how, when you get in his presence, when you brought that up of just the burden lifting. And so
Yeah.
often what the world says, it's on us, it's on us and on us. And I remember when that used to be me and I felt that weight. And, I've shared this on my podcast before. This might be news to you. I felt that weight so much and I had that anxiety so much that I smoked weed for 10 years. And the Lord lifted that from me, went cold turkey almost like 2 years ago, got rid of it because he said, you cut me off when you do that. And I said, Lord, I don't want to cut you off. I'm hearing you clear now more than ever. And I dumped everything in the trash. That
Wow.
burden that I was putting on myself, that the world was putting on me, that I allowed to press on me when the Lord's like, you do not have to carry those things. It is
Exactly.
imperative. And even when you speak, I find this now, just even as a speaker myself and helping others, I channel this thought all the time. Lord, what do you want me to say? Lord, more of you, less of me, more of you, less of me. I repeat that to myself all the time because the more I bring him in, the less I have put myself in there, the more he can speak and come through rather than feeling that's where you feel that burden and that heaviness of, oh, it's all on me. I have to perform. It's like, no, actually, Lord, it's on you. So you just let me know how you want me to facilitate this. And then do our due diligence to be an excellence, but allowing him to use us. And I love that you brought that up because it does release so much pressure.
So much pressure, right? It's like changes everything and it changes how we communicate and approach those situations and those relationships. It changes all of the thinking about it and our entire, even emotional well-being about like how we're going to engage in that conversation, right? Because we can get ourselves worked up into anxiety. We can put, like you said, a bunch of pressure on ourselves. But the bottom line is that none of us can love like Jesus loved, right? We just cannot. Outside of him filling us and his supernatural infilling to us of his perfect love, right? Because we can operate out of fear, which is a myriad of things in our lives, or we can actually ask him, fill me with your love because I can't love like you do, but you can fill me so that I can love the way you want me to love this person and to be, the friend that you want me to be to this person in the midst of whatever challenge we're having, right? And so that's his heart. Like he is so for us and he wants that relationship with us to be so solidified because we're so much stronger together. We go further together than we would on our own. We know these things, but these issues and these things get in the way and will stop us and will want to hinder us. So I'm excited and I'm hoping that whoever hears this, in our conversation, that they just are inspired to just really go after just really diving deep with the Lord and any kind of relational conflict they're having or any situation that is just emotionally rocking their boat because he wants to bring healing. He wants to bring reconciliation. He wants to bring a connectedness that is so much stronger than anything we could do in our own strength. So when we bring it to him, it changes everything.
Oh my gosh, that's so good. And I loved your phrase, we can go further together than we can go on our own. I say the same thing. And that's clear because you have a community. I know our community, it's just there's so much out there and we have to band together. And the enemy has done everything since literally the dawn of time to tear women, people apart. How can we drive the wedge? And so this relational intelligence conversation is so timely at any time because there's always wedges looking to let me plant one here, let me plant one there. Don't let it, like, get it out of there. It's your garden. You want things to flourish. You get out the weeds, you get out the bugs, you get out everything that you can, and things might creep in. Oh, wait, I don't want that there. Let's take it out. So I love just how intentional that is. And Joanne, before we wrap up today, I'd love for you to share a little bit more about Kingdom Women, because I'm sure people listening to this are like, what is that? I want to know more. I love everything about what Joanne is doing, what she's talking about, and just how to connect with more Kingdom Women.
Oh, thank you. Well, we are just a ministry that empowers and inspires women to walk in the fullness of their God-given purpose and identity. And we do that just with transformed mindsets and just really going after kingdom thinking, kingdom living, kingdom relationships. And so we have a website. You can follow us on Instagram at Kingdom Women Global, or you can actually. Our website is, www.kingdomwomenglobal.com. So you can follow us or find us there too. We're our team is releasing a devotional book in March. So we have 30-day devotionals that'll be coming out. So it'll be kind of a trio set, talking about just our importance of our time with him, our connection with him, also with our relationships and our purpose. So those will come out in March and we'll talk about them on our Instagram. So you can follow, probably Instagram is the easiest way to find out about what's happening in our world. But yeah, we'd love to have you join us on the journey.
Love that. And they're just you obviously you've been able to tell throughout this whole entire conversation just how pure-hearted they are and just how much they pour out because it matters. I mean, I'm sure this is probably a whole nother podcast, but what you've gone through to have the wisdom that you've had today, I just want to say thank you because I'm sure there was a ton of trial and error, maybe friendships lost and things said that was hurtful, but you have overcome. And by the power of that testimony and what you've walked through, you now have authority here. And women or men even listening to this are gleaning from that of how can I just do better? Knowing that I have the power to do better, why not? Everybody's waiting for somebody else to go first. You listening to this right now, it's your chance to possibly go first, possibly change somebody else's life perspective. Wow, I didn't know people could love me like that or listen like that, be there for me like that. Even if you've never seen that in your own life, be that change that you want to see. Because everybody, again, is waiting for somebody else, but they're really waiting for you. So just go in there and do it. So, Joanne, this has been incredible. Thank you so, so much. Is there anything that you would love to leave us with here today?
Well, I think if anything, I would just say, just my heart for anybody who's hearing this is that relationships matter. and they are the greatest gift that will ever walk into your life. So don't diminish the relationships that God's put around you. Don't walk away from difficult conversations. Don't don't think that this doesn't matter to God, because it does. Before he went to the cross, in John 13, he prayed, and the three things he prayed about before he was like, when I think about this, it just always blows me away. Before he was literally knowing that he was going to the cross, he prayed about firstly about our intimacy and connection with him. The second thing he prayed about was us and our relationships to one another. And the third thing he prayed about was about us reaching the world and the lost. So if we can keep those things in our life in order, our connection to him is always first, but our relationships matter, and
Mm.
he is all about it. And so to think that we can skip that part and go straight to the world, we're not going to be as effective and as impactful as we want to be unless we deal with the relational part of our world. So I just hope people just feel encouraged and inspired, like, be brave, have those conversations, do it in love, because he is with you, he is for you, and he will fight these battles because he wants us to be connected and with the right people for our kingdom purposes, and he will be with us in every conversation, every step, if we just surrender it to him.
So beautiful. What a beautiful way to end. Joanne, thank you so much for coming on, pouring out. Please go follow her. All of her information is in the show notes. She's just doing incredible things for the kingdom. So thank you again so much for coming on today.
Of course, it was my honor and privilege, and love this conversation. Thanks, Molly, for having me.
Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this episode. It means the world to me that you would lean in, listen in, and be able to hear the value that's being shared on this show. Don't forget, if you love this episode, rate the show, leave me a review, be sure to share it with a friend, and don't forget to tag me on social media. I will definitely be giving you a shout out. Also, come say hi, drop in the DMs. I would love to be able to hear what stood out to you the most on the episode, and if there's any topics that you would like to hear on the show. We'll see you next time.